Boom. And we're live. I'm here with Mr. Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco of the Philly the podcast. Sir, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to talk some Eagles, even though it's probably gonna be a little sad, but I'm excited to do it. I'm excited.
Unfortunately, that is the way lately. There's not too much to be excited about, other than, we're originally we had a top 10 pick. Now we've moved to the 12th pick, which is an interesting process we will get into for sure. But let's start with you and the Philly the podcast. When did you get started? Why did you get started? How did you get started? I know you have a co-host, Brandon. How did that whole thing come together?
Starting with Brandon, me and Brandon have been friends since like middle school. So I've known him most of my life. And one of the things that always connected us was the Eagles. So, it was something that we've always done. We've always talked football. We've got like a little group chat with a bunch of our friends that we just shoot the breeze, so to speak, about the Eagles all the time. And then once COVID hit last year, everybody, I'm sure everybody was feeling it. I was stuck at home. The original career path kind of became a little diminished. I used to be a chef before
Okay.
this. So it got a little bit diminished. I was like a private chef. Most people did not want me in their house after the whole pandemic. So I decided to turn on, my computer and talk to some random people and see what would happen. And, now we're here almost a year later, and, we've got almost 2,000 subscribers, over almost 300,000 views. And like I was telling you offline, it's just been a blessing, to be honest, how well it's done. So I've been very lucky. Been very lucky.
I think of the many things that COVID will be remembered for, it is the spawn of the amount of podcasts that have come from everyone just being at home and inside their head, for sure. Now, when it comes to being an Eagles fan, how did that start for you?
That's a little bit tougher of a question. So, when I was growing up, my whole family is from New York. Literally every single one of my family, except for me, I was the first born in Connecticut. So when I was born, everybody was a Giants fan. I didn't have much choice when it came to like baseball. So I am a Yankees fan. I know that breaks a lot of my Philly fans' hearts, but but when it came to football, my first game was an Eagles versus Giants game. I went with my father. And my father basically, it was a very close game. He was like, I was very young, and he was like, "Look, if we win, son, you got to be a Giants fan." So I was like, "All right, whatever." I think I lost my mic for a second.
We're good. Yeah, now.
My fault. But no, it was more so something that me and my father just kind of argued about every Sunday. So it was a way to bond. You know what I'm saying? Kind of our difference was our similarity in a sense. But that's really how it started, and just never looked back.
No, that's funny, because even in that story right there, we have a couple of things in common. I'm not from Connecticut, but I am from New York. I'm from up near Syracuse. So, once the Eagles drafted McNabb, that was about the time I was getting into football. So it was basically all history from there. And the first game I witnessed live was on my 21st birthday. Went to see the Eagles play the Giants at home. And unfortunately, the Giants won that game, unfortunately. But it's still painful.
One of the few. Giants haven't been that lucky against us lately. So.
Dude, I can remember Ahmad Bradshaw just walking into the end zone. I can remember Nnamdi Asomugha just diving for a ball that he got burned by. It was that kind of year. Vic was starting, and it was a tough.
Nnamdi should be a curse word. Nnamdi should just be a curse word at this point.
I don't get it, man. I don't get what happens to corners when they come to Philly. Asante Samuel is like the exception. But otherwise, I just, obviously Bradley Fletcher and Kerry Williams aren't, no one was going to shout about them at the time. But either way, there's just this weird thing that happens to free agent corners when they come to Nickel Roby-Coleman. Another good example. It's just weird what happens to corners when they come here. But going from that, now I want to, obviously we could talk about McNabb, we could talk about the Sam Bradford years and all that weird stuff, but I'd rather start 2016. The Philadelphia Eagles select Carson Wentz, number 2 overall. What were you thinking at the time when they drafted Wentz?
I was excited, man. I was very, very excited. And I think it was more so the moves that led up to it. Chip Kelly era was one of the toughest eras for a lot of fans, especially, if you're of our generation. So watching that was just a poop show, to say the least. I don't know how to say it better than that. But once we got Doug Peterson, once we got Carson Wentz, it felt like Howie Roseman was just hitting on every pick, not every pick, but every pickup as far as free agency went. He was just making the right moves. Our core was in their prime. It just, everything felt right, and a lot of people, were saying that it was going to be a 5-6 year rebuild. And when we got Carson and we saw him kind of go crazy against the Steelers, I think that was really the game that I was like, okay, this kid could be something. Like this could really be real, and then to jump ahead a little bit, I don't want to jump too far, but then you go and get somebody like, Alshon Jeffrey. It's just one of those things that it's like everything seemed to start hitting 2016. Obviously, we saw what happened in 2017. Was it? It's the weirdest thing because we talk about this all the time. Me and Brandon talk about this, and it's like, was that an outlier year? Was it just a flash in the pan? Who knows? But at that moment, when we got Carson Wentz, when he was called, I was ecstatic because I was not a fan of Jared Goff. I did not want Jared Goff. So I felt like it was perfect. I felt like everything just fell into place that year. So, I mean, it sucks now, but I was very, very happy when we got Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I got to say the same. And quick shout out here to Rena Friedman Watts of the Better Call Daddy podcast, a fantastic podcast. If you haven't checked it out, please tune in. She does great shows with great guests, and then her dad does kind of like an analysis afterwards, and he's such a charming man, and she's such a charming woman. Please, if you have the time, check out the Better Call Daddy podcast with Rena. But yeah, I mean, dude, it's actually, she worked on the Jerry Springer show, among other things, so she's got quite a few stories, and the people she's talked to, yeah, it's worth a check for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But you mentioned, transitioning from the Chip Kelly era, which drove a lot of fans nuts, I'm sure, because there was so much talent on that team that he just was like, I want none of you. It was
exactly,
the up-tempo thing seemed to work the first year. And then once like Vic wasn't a part of the offense anymore and it was more Foles and Bradford, like we're not sustaining drives. The defense is getting tired. Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox are out of place in the 3-4 defense. Like, and then, you get rid of Shady, you get rid of Deshaun, you get rid of, like, there's just so much that was frustrating. And that's why it was nice to have a refreshing start with Doug, to get Howie, where he supposedly needed to be as a GM. I mean, Doug was, he was a KC guy. He was from Andy Reid's little tree there, and everyone thought it was hunky-dory. And to be honest, I mean, 2017, the year after you draft Carson Wentz, not only do you go to the playoffs, you win a freaking Super Bowl. And that might have been the secret sauce. It's not just Doug Peterson, but obviously you have Frank Reich as the OC. You have Dave Filippo, I think, right? Filippo, yeah.
Yeah.
Quarterback coach.
John Filippo.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. John Filippo, yeah. And it seemed to be, those trio of guys were really the secret sauce, because even when Carson went down, diving into the end zone versus the Rams, you still had Nick Foles step up and give the performance of a lifetime. So, you move on to 2018, you make the playoffs again without Wentz, a heartbreaker in New Orleans. The ball goes through Alshon Jeffrey's hands, and Lord only knows, what would have happened if the Eagles went on to win that game. And then again, we wind up in the playoffs in 2019, and Carson goes down thanks to a shot from Jadeveon Clowney. And it's tough to argue against Doug. I mean, he did nothing but succeed since he took over for the Eagles, but there was just like always this weird, Carson had to be that weird stat where he was the 4,000-yard passer without a 500-yard receiver, and the offensive line shuffle, and Jason Peters comes back, and Andre Dillard, and all this sort of stuff. I don't know, man. It feels like Doug kind of got a rough go. I mean, how do you feel about the way his experience happened in Philly? Do you wish he was still with the team? Do you think this fresh start's a good idea? I mean, what's your outlook for the coaching staff?
I mean, I like Doug. I feel like a lot of our success the past couple of years outside of the 2017 season, honestly, it was a lot of it was due to just our division being mediocre at best, to be honest. We've kind of, slipped into the playoffs a lot, and maybe that overshadowed the lack of coaching, and I don't want to say that he was a bad coach. I just don't feel like he ever progressed. So I feel like we got, in 2016, he was the same coach that he was in 2020. And that's just not something that you can do. Not in this league. A lot of the greatest coaches either don't have say in play calling, or they're consistently changing and fine tuning their plays and play calling. So I just feel like he never did that. I feel like there was never an actual shift. Obviously, there was a lot of different views as far as the front office goes. Can't speak. We've heard that Jeffrey Lurie had his own vision for this. Obviously Howie has his own vision for this. Doug had his own vision for this. Obviously, the person signing the check is the vision you want to go with. So Doug didn't want to do that. I mean, lately it kind of felt like he wanted to get fired, just because some of the stuff that he was saying was just kind of like, you knew that they weren't with that. You're trying to bring back some of these coaches that he was trying to bring back. It was just like, bro, like, is that really the hill you want to die on? Like, right. I understand that these might be your friends. These are your colleagues. These are people you respect. But at the end of the day, they're not getting the job done. So, like you said, I have a co-host. I love Brandon to death. And he'll probably say the same about me, man. If one of us aren't doing our job, we're going to have to find somebody that's going to be doing their job. Because at the end of the day, everything's a business. So, it sucks, but I think it was best for the team. I think Nick Sirianni is a good guy. I think he's getting a little bit of an unfair shake, but it is Philly. So that's what we're good for. But, I mean, I like it. I like that, the front office is willing to not settle, not be like, oh, well, we went 10-6. That's cool. Because we did that with Chip Kelly as well. I mean, he had 2 10-win seasons. One of them, obviously, we didn't make the playoffs, but he did his job as a coach. Him as a general manager was probably the worst thing that we could have done. But, at the end of the day, 10 wins isn't going to win you a Super Bowl on a consistent basis. So, I'm glad that we went out there and tried to get better at the coaching spot. Do I think that Doug was the worst thing that ever happened to Philly? Obviously. Now, I think he was a great coach, but he got stagnant. And I feel like he really didn't want to be here at a certain point. I just feel like the how it was working, the dynamic of, front office, Jeffrey Lurie's involvement, Howie Roseman involvement. I don't think he liked that. I think that he wanted more say. And I honestly don't think Jeffrey or Howie were willing to do that because of Chip Kelly. So it's a tough situation, it really is, because I don't think Nick Sirianni is going to get much say either. But I guess that's a whole nother topic right there.
Oh yeah, the deep dive on Howie Roseman after he's stepped away from the team and away from the game. If we get like a 30 for 30 type of thing, I'm so going to be all over that, just to see like how much. Because obviously, Andy Reid was the man, no doubt about it. I mean, he kept us in so many championships, and the team was doing well, regardless of the Super Bowls. I mean, we were just always there, and good offensive line, good defensive line. And then Andy steps away. Chip comes in and says, okay, I'm going to do things my way. Very talented roster that Andy had built to start out with. And then once Chip, I bought into the culture thing at first. I was like, yeah, let's have, just the sweetest guys you could find and put them on the team, and they'll be involved in the community and all that. And that's nice for sure, but you got to win games too. And granted, like you said, 10-6, but you just keep getting rid of talent. The morale goes down over time. The formula is obvious, right? If we don't keep converting these third downs, our defense gets tired, and then we just get whipped all over the field. So I feel like after the Chip Kelly era, Howie said, you know what? I'm what was working here in Philly. So I need to step back up and be the man. I need to hire a yes man in Doug. And I feel like maybe Doug just got tired of being yes manned around, because at the end, I mean, it did seem like from the reports I heard and read, I mean, he was being micromanaged, and maybe the Jalen Hurts pick wasn't his pick, and maybe, benching Wentz and putting in Hurts. I don't know ultimately whose decision was what. I know that from what I've heard recently, I mean, Jeffrey Lurie really wanted Jalen Hurts. I know that he wanted JJ Arcega-Whiteside. So, I mean, what's your thoughts? Okay, I'll do this in 2 parts. Do you feel like Jeffrey Lurie as an owner is too involved in the process? And B, what were your initial reactions to Jalen Hurts being drafted?
So with Jeffrey, as you've seen the show, so I have spoken to a couple of different reporters that have been in there, and like what they tell me is that they don't think that he's changed his involvement at all. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like a big difference as far as like this draft, like him saying, this is what I want. They said that's always kind of been the deal. This year is just a little bit more out there. I don't think he's too involved. I think at the end of the day, you pay for this team. You have to make those decisions. I think that the biggest thing for me is accountability.
Right.
If you're going to make those decisions, be accountable for those decisions. If you're going to, say to Jim Schwartz, listen, I'm not going to get you a linebacker, be honest with that when our linebacking core sucks. If you're going to go out there and get JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who needs his mom holding up an umbrella for him, be honest with that when the kid's a bust, and I just don't feel like him nor Howie Roseman have truly taken accountability. And it kind of extends to Doug Peterson to a certain extent, but it's kind of like what you said, that you don't really know what he did. So it's kind of hard to really say what his involvement was. So while I do feel as though at the end of the day, Howie and Jeffrey, because at the end of the day, they're tied to the hip. Those two are one and the same. If Howie makes a decision, it's most likely because Jeffrey's okaying it or is the one saying to make it happen. So, that's the honest truth there. So I think it's not going to change. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think he just has to make the right decisions, because when he does, we're fine. You can fire just about anybody on this staff. You really can't fire the owner, right? So, he has to just make the right decisions, and he has before. I've been one of the people that have been very vocal in saying we have not missed on many quarterbacks when they're high draft picks, and that works two ways for Jalen Hurts, and this is going into my reaction for Jalen Hurts. Obviously, when it happened, it was the dumbest pick in my opinion. Like, I wish to this day that I had a YouTube channel at that moment, so I could like really say how I felt. Like, it was bad. I was very upset. But realistically, there's two ways. If you knew that something was wrong with Carson mentally, physically, whatever it may be, emotionally, whatever you want to call it, if you knew that the situation was shaky with Carson, and you felt Jalen Hurts can be that next guy, can be that franchise guy, it's hard for me to really like doubt them, because realistically, look at the coaches, the quarterbacks that we've drafted in the first two rounds. We don't do it often.
Right.
We don't really do it often, and when we do, we usually hit. So even if it's a Kevin Cobb, he sucked for us, right? But we got a second round pick out of him from Arizona. So it's like I don't doubt their ability to draft key positions. It's just that lately we've missed, I should say, on some very big prospects. You look at somebody like Justin Jefferson, you look at somebody like DK Metcalf, and look, I can make the argument that a lot of these guys were passed over by every team, right? DK Metcalf was in the second round. He got passed over by, at least, if I'm being real, at least 6 teams that really needed a wide receiver. I think 6 wide receivers went before him. I could be wrong about that exact number, but I know he had a number of people before him. So, really, I can't. It's so hard to like really just nail them on their misses, because it's a crapshoot. The NFL draft is a crapshoot. You have almost 1,000 players, and out of those 1,000 players, maybe 20 of them, will really, really be an NFL, all pro, all perennial type guy. So it's a crapshoot. But when you make decisions like Jalen Hurts, you really open yourself up to criticism. So that's really where I am. It was a dumb move, but where we are right now, it was still a dumb move, but they can prove themselves right. If he goes out there and they give him a shot, then we can really do well. I think he's got all the intangibles. I just need to see it on the field now. I think that he showed us some great things. I think he showed us some rookie type things. So I think he can be a great player. So I love the player. I have no problem with the player at all. Just need wise, it's not what we needed. Terrible pick. Just dumb idea. It was just a dumb idea. We could have had. So there was a couple linebackers that were on the board at the time. There was a couple wide receivers that were on the board at the time. Shoot, I think there was a cornerback or two that I wouldn't have been too mad about. So it was just a terrible decision. There's a little bit of me that thinks that it was kind of to keep him away from Dallas, which I'm not too upset about. But even so, that's just dumb. It's just bad business, So Yeah, I know it's long-winded, but it's like I'm upset about it, but at the same time, it's like I'm starting to come around to maybe they knew something, maybe they knew something. I need that 30 for 30, like you said.
No, I couldn't agree more with the Dallas aspect of it. Maybe a small piece of it, but I definitely don't forget when they drafted Dallas Goedert. I believe they moved ahead of the Cowboys to make that pick, and they were looking for a tight end after Jason Witten had departed, and they grabbed that tight end named Dallas, who was supposed to be the next prospect. So I do think there's something. I mean, CeeDee Lamb. I was wanting so badly for the Eagles to make a move with the Falcons to get CeeDee Lamb. The Falcons wind up taking AJ Terrell, which they probably could have taken later if they had just taken our spot, and we didn't get CeeDee. So there was also something to like, okay, we wanted CeeDee Lamb so bad, we're going to take the quarterback that he's most comfortable with, and screw you, Dallas, type of thing. So that definitely could be it.
And I will say, even if we would have took that second round pick and moved up to go get a CeeDee Lamb, I think that's what kind of hurts the Eagles fans the most. It's like, I made a joke about it, but man, we might be sitting at 12 and see Kyle Pitts on the board and see, Jamar Chase on the board and be like, oh my God, this is what we wanted. And we might still go get a quarterback. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. This is what I'm accustomed to now. That's how you know.
Absolutely. No, and I definitely want to get into this year's draft for sure. The moment I knew the Eagles were in trouble last season was when they were formulating the coaching staff. It seemed like we were bringing in you're a chef and you're familiar with the term, too many chefs spoil the soup, or, something like that.
Yeah, too many chefs in the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, just what it felt like. I mean, we couldn't even name an offensive coordinator. It had to be this guy's the running game coordinator, this guy's the passing game coordinator. So, okay, we get to 3rd and 2, we get to 4th and goal. I mean, you can't be messing around like that. We got to have one guy with one play who's going to send it in. And as soon as I saw the way the coaching staff was being formed, I'm like, okay, we're in trouble this year. And sure enough, we were. The play calling was atrocious. Seemed like there was just no easy plays. Another year of like 5 yards here, 2 yards there, setback. Now we're 3rd and long. And I just, it makes no sense to me how hard they make it look when you have teams like, and granted, teams like Green Bay, teams like San Fran, I mean, they have different things going for them, but they just make 10 yards look so easy, where the Eagles make 2 yards look impossible at times. It's so frustrating. But
and I will say, to kind of piggyback off what you're saying with the coaching staff, like if you remember I'll never forget this, when Doug Peterson literally came out to a press conference and was like, yeah, my coaches will be back. And the next day they were fired. I mean, that was when I was like, yeah, this is probably over. This is probably not, if that ever happened to me, man, I would go crazy. I would literally go crazy. That's more than micromanaging. That's like spitting in someone's face, basically. Like, damn. So I feel you. I definitely agree.
Oh, yeah. And you're talking about, some of the players who were on the board when they took Hurts in the 2nd round. You mentioned quite a few positions that were available. I know there were a couple of guys I was looking at. The one that sticks out to me right now off the top of my head is Jeremy Chin. I mean, it would be interesting to see what this defense would look like with Jeremy Chin on the back end. But regardless, I mean, did you like Hurts as a prospect? Just regardless of, the Eagles pick, what have you, did you like him as a prospect?
Yeah, no. I mean, I didn't think that he was like a franchise guy, if I'm being 100% honest. And if I'm being real, he hasn't really shown me that he is yet. I do like him. I do love his mentality. He had some great years in college. He went through some adversity in college, which is always nice to see somebody overcome. If we were a QB needy team, I probably still wouldn't have picked him in the first. It is what it is. So like, I mean, people compare him to this year's draft class a lot. And I mostly Eagles fans when I say people, but people are always saying, he would be the best quarterback in this draft. And I don't know. Like, if I had to put him in this draft class, he would probably maybe be like the 4th or 5th, in my opinion. And that's just going off his college. Like I said, I can't really judge him on what he did in the NFL because, one, it was very inconsistent. I don't really put that on him. I feel like like we've been saying, the play calling was very, very inconsistent. Every excuse that everybody wanted to use for Carson Wentz can be the same thing that you say for somebody like Jalen Hurts. The offensive line wasn't there. The wide receivers were just basically a rotating door. And realistically, Jalen Hurts got the most out of these wide receivers. And I'm not here to bash Carson Wentz. I do it enough on my channel. But, he didn't really do what Jalen Hurts did. I feel like Jalen Hurts gave us a spark. So to keep on last year, did I think he was a top prospect? Did I like him as a prospect? Two different answers. I liked him, but I didn't think he was that guy. I didn't think he was the number one guy coming out last year. I thought last year, honestly, was pretty weak of a draft class for quarterbacks after you got out of like the top 3, maybe top 2, to be honest. So, right. Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow were really the only ones that did anything, right? So,
yeah,
it's kind of where I am right now,
No, for sure. And I listened to your episode on your YouTube channel. Again, Philly, the podcast. Go check it out. You talked about the video was titled My Final Thoughts on Carson Wentz. I believe it was something to that effect. I was like, okay, I definitely could use this for the conversation tonight. And it's basically, as you said, toward the introduction, you felt like a lover scorned, because the more I listened to the podcast, you never really talked about him negatively as a player. You just didn't like how the exit happened. And I could totally sympathize with that. I mean, listen, you're going to face some adversity as an NFL quarterback, and having a little competition, you should expect that from time to time. You get benched, that just means you could do better. And certainly from the year he had, the fumbles, the interceptions, holding on to the ball too long. And I'm a huge, trust me, you have 2 Carson Wentz jerseys from what I understand. I have one for sure. I watched him in the Senior Bowl. From 2016, I have been a Carson Wentz guy. I think in the history of the NFL, the amount of quarterbacks who have done so much with so little, he's got to be in that category. 2017, they gave him Alshon, they gave him Torrey Smith, Zach Ertz, for sure. For sure, 2017, they helped him out. Otherwise, it's been a practice squad wide receivers, and we've been tops of things like most different offensive linemen, in a game at one time. So that certainly hasn't helped. We saw Patrick Mahomes and what he had to do in the Super Bowl when he had one offensive lineman out. He was running for his life the whole time. The offense couldn't get going. So I will always defend Carson Wentz in that sense. But I do understand the criticism of, listen, you could have handled the controversy a little bit better. Personally, I don't expect anything from a player outside of what they do on the field. Like, a lot of people don't like Carson Wentz and Fletcher Cox and Trent Cole because they hunt and they show pictures of them on their Instagram holding up a wild boar. I could care less. Like, do you produce on the field? That, as me as a football fan, if you contribute to society, that's great. But really, your job, what you get paid to do, is produce on the field. And I felt like Wentz was doing that. Unfortunately, this season, I don't feel like anyone could have succeeded. And yet, when I say that, Jalen Hurts came in his first start as a pro and beat one of the top defenses in the league in the Saints. So the spark was noticeable once Jalen Hurts took over. It was the first time I saw the defense really get turnovers. It was the first time Jalen Reagor had a punt return for a touchdown. There is something to a spark of a guy like Jalen Hurts. And that's why when I look to this season, I have so much hope. I think the guys in the locker room truly respect what he can do on and off the field. And we talked earlier, you've talked to guys like a Chris McPherson, a Dave Spadaro, who are truly involved in this organization, a Derek Gunn, who are truly involved in this organization and what they're thinking. So, did you get a feel for them of any sort of optimism toward this season? Do you feel like they thought it was a rebuilding year or a retooling year?
One thing I've learned, and this is no knock on them at all, take this the right way, please. You gotta know who's telling you things. When you work for an employer, you're not gonna say, this team sucks, right? Yeah. So I do feel like they are excited to see what this team is gonna be. Dave Spadaro was very honest, and he said it's got to be on, but you've got to see it on the field, right? I think they're excited about the prospect of, like you said, kind of the spark. This is a youth movement if we've ever seen one, right? This is the probably the farthest left that the Eagles team have gone, at least in my lifetime. I mean,
Right.
I'm used to Andy Reid. We've had like maybe three other coaches now other than him. But, so this is a big difference for us. So I think all of them were very excited about that prospect. As am I. I think everybody's very excited about who Nick Sirianni is. But we don't know what he is, right? We know that he's a fireball. He really is. He has a lot of energy. He's very exciting to watch. Very exciting as a coach. He's gonna be that guy yelling at people on the sideline, slapping a lot of butts. You know what I'm saying? That's who he is, and that's cool. I'm cool with that. So I think that's very exciting for people that have worked there for so long that haven't seen something like that. So in that aspect, I think it's definitely something that excites them. But we got to see what happens on the field, because I think we've all, if I'm being 100% honest, I don't think many, if any, people were that excited about Doug Peterson when he first got hired. So we see now what he was. So, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be excited about this guy, but I just like his personality. And I think that that's something that is huge. And I think that the word that he continuously has been saying that I love, you heard me say on this, is accountability. I'm hoping, he even said no banana routes, right? So, I'm hoping that he sticks to that. I'm hoping that he's going to be the guy that if Jalen Hurts sucks, Jalen Hurts doesn't play. If Miles Sanders sucks, Miles Sanders doesn't. I'm hoping he's that guy. Doesn't matter what the name on the back of the jersey is. It matters what they're doing out on the field. So I've said it multiple times. I'm willing for this season to just be that figure it out season. Like I never want to say let's lose, but I'm willing to have a rough season to figure out what this youth is, because I don't feel like they got that fair chance. So as far as excitement, I think everyone should be excited about seeing what this youth can offer, because at the very least, that's what we should get, because we didn't even get that last year, right? I mean, we were starting Alshon over Travis Fulgham. We were starting, Ertz every other couple games when he could play. We were starting Jason Peters over Jordan Mailata. So we didn't really see competition last year. We saw paychecks play. That's the best way to put it. We saw paychecks play. We didn't necessarily see players. So this year, I think we're going to see that competition, and I love to hear it. Even the QB competition. I know that some people are ticked off about that, but at the end of the day, nobody should be safe, especially when you're losing. So I'm excited. They made me excited about some of these players, about some of these coaches. But like I said, you kind of gotta take it with a grain of salt when you know what I'm saying. Like I know you're not gonna poop on your boss on live show, so it is what it is. But I think they are excited. I think they're excited about the whole feel of it.
Oh yeah, that's when it's refreshing to have someone like a Brandon Lee Gowton, who you've also had from Bleeding Green Nation, because he'll give it to you straight. I mean, he's not directly affiliated with the organization, so to speak, but he's definitely involved with those who are in the know, and he'll definitely tell you how he feels about the organization regardless. So it's really cool that you've had him and Seamus Clancy on as well from Bleeding Green Nation. I love listening to those guys. Me personally, I feel like it's more of a retooling year than a rebuilding year. And I get both sides, right? I mean, some people think that Jalen Hurts is, just a guy, and we have a lot of young guys, which we do. But for me, like, if I was thinking of a rebuilding year, and I realize this is like making it pretty narrow, but if I'm thinking of a rebuilding year, I'm thinking brand new head coach, which we do have, but also a brand new rookie quarterback, which we don't have. So far we're rolling with Jalen Hurts. And then we just have a lot of veterans in the right places. I mean, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelsey, Sayamalu. Like granted, it's a huge if, but if those guys stay healthy, that's still a top line, offensive line in the NFL. And then just look at the other side of the ball. Our whole defensive line is all vets. Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, very proven. Still want to wait to see what we have in Javon Hargrave. But then you have Darius Slay at corner. So to me, I just feel like a rebuilding year involves a lot more rookies and young guys than we have. The youngest guys we have, I think, are at the right positions. Wide receiver is a spot where you want to have some young guys. And granted, no matter what happens in the draft, I still feel a weird connection to Arthega-Whiteside, Hightower, and Watkins because I want all those guys to succeed. But I know that there's going to come a point where one of them's going to get cut. One of them's going to go to the practice squad. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing to keep those guys around. But for me, that's why it feels like more of a retooling year, because we have a lot of veterans in the right places. It's just capitalizing on the youth and the different positions that we need. So
See,
yeah, go ahead.
I try to be middle ground when it comes to players, because we do have players on as well sometimes for interviews. And I will say, I hope he's not watching, but I will probably never ever DM JJ Arcega-Whiteside for an interview. I cannot wait till that man is off this team. It's just everything with that guy. Like, it's just everything. Like, it's just everything with him for me. Like, I understand you were the second round pick, and I would love to be proven wrong. I would love it. I just don't see it happening, man. Like, he's just – there's nothing that I've seen other than his blocking. He can block his butt off. And I've said this before, and people thought I was kidding, but I'm actually serious. If you move him to tight end, he might actually flourish. Like, the kid can't run a route. Like, that's the thing. He can't run routes. He can block. And he can catch. He can definitely – he's a great contested catch guy, but, like, he can't run a route. So I don't understand why he's on the outside. Maybe move him to tight end if you really want to see if you can make something of him. But we have like 15 tight ends right now. I just really don't see the area that he can succeed in. Like, yeah, I think that we wanted him to be the next Alshon. And realistically, I don't think that there's ever going to be another Alshon. And not because Alshon was Megatron or anything, but because Alshon is really not what the NFL is about anymore. If you look at some of these bigger guys, look at Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a good example. He's bigger than Alshon Jeffrey, faster than Alshon Jeffrey, plays tight end. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just the NFL is changing so much. I think that they wanted to recreate 2017, you know what I'm saying, with that, fast guy on the outside, and you got the big hand or big catch radius, strong-handed wide receiver. It just didn't work. And then this goes back to the accountability. At some point, you have to be honest with yourself and take the L, take that loss, and just say, listen, we made the wrong choice. And that's the same thing with Jalen. Like, if you don't believe in Jalen Hurts, be honest with yourself and just say, we messed up. We're going to go get Justin Fields now. Like, I'm okay with that. Just make the right decision. Don't wade in the water for too long. Because we're not a team that drafts well anyways. So, the whole thought process that we're going to rebuild this team and then all we'll need is a quarterback, that's unlikely, to be honest. That's just not who we are. So if we go get a quarterback, we can build the other positions. We've kind of shown that. We can get a good offensive line. We can get a good defensive line. Realistically, though, like, I do believe in Jalen Hurts. I'm not saying that we need to get rid of him. My biggest concern with this team is the defense. And I feel like if the defense can be good, if the defense can be a top 15 defense, we might make some damn noise, because realistically, Jalen Hurts can score. And if he hasn't shown anything else with that crappy playbook that he was using last year, he was putting up numbers. We saw him in the first half against Arizona Cardinals, didn't do much, right? Then he came out and balled out. Realistically, we had a chance to win that game. Who lost that game was the defense. I mean, you can look at a lot of games that we lost with Carson too, and it was probably the defense mostly. So we have to fix that defense. And not only are they bad, they're old, and that's a very, very, very scary combination. Like, the offense, we might not be that great, but we're very young. So, we're still just kind of a blob of Play-Doh, on offense. We can be molded into whatever. We got a bunch of old dogs on defense, and they're good. Don't get me wrong. Darius Slay is a dog. Fletcher Cox is an animal. Brandon Graham's my guy. I love him. And the list goes on. There's a lot of good players on this team. Rodney McLeod, love the guy. Even the guys that we just picked up, Anthony Harris, I think is, they're actually both young, so never mind, forget that. So the veterans that we have on defense that are our best players, they're getting old, man. And this is who we are. So unless something changes drastically, you have to get some young studs on that defense that can really help Fletcher Cox out. Fletcher Cox has been who he is without a dominant linebacking core for his whole career. Imagine that man having a linebacking core that a center, a guard has to actually worry about, getting to the second level, or having a middle linebacker that knows how to fill gaps. We've never really had that. Our best linebacker was really like D'Amico Ryans, while we had Fletcher Cox. Not saying D'Amico Ryans is trash, but I mean, come on, let's give him some help. Let's give this defense some help. So realistically, if I had to pinpoint what makes me most nervous about this team next year, it's our defense. But if our defense can get it together, bro, I really do think we have talent on this offense. I really do. I think the NFL is all about scheme. You can have any team, and our coach right now is the best proof of that. If you look at the Colts didn't really they had terrible quarterback play. Realistically, outside of Andrew Luck, they didn't have one top 15 quarterback, realistically. So they had good defense. In the beginning of the year, their running game was trash, but they kept with it. And, Jonathan Taylor turned out to be a great player. So, look, I think that the NFL is all about scheme. You can scheme anybody open, then you're great. You're fine. You're good. That's what it's all about. So if our coach can scheme these young guys into good positions, I have no queries that the offense can be good enough at the very least. The defense is what scares me.
No, I totally agree. I mean, Fletcher Cox missed a couple games last year. I don't know if he missed full games, but he certainly was, in and out of the lineup more so than he usually has been. It was almost like watching Alshon, but on defense. He'd get in a play and he'd sit out a play, and then another guy would come in. So I couldn't agree more. I think getting Javon Hargrave next to him was a big move. I like Javon. I liked Benny Logan as well, but Benny wasn't nearly the same, penetrator. Like Benny was good in the run game, but he was never going to push the pocket like Javon Hargrave can do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't work out with Malik Jackson because I thought for sure he was going to be a big contributor. Didn't really happen.
And it's crazy. He was never hurt before he came to the Eagles. First game, he's out for the year. It's like, really, bro? Like I just knew we were cursed when that happened.
Of course. And then, tries with Mike to draft an edge rusher. I mean, Derek Barnett's been mediocre. Sharif Miller never worked out. Obviously, Marcus Smith in the Chip Kelly era was a huge miss. So we're still trying to find that, edge rusher to take over for Brandon Graham because he can only do it for so much longer, like you said. So I do think Rich Gannon's scheme is going to help out a lot. I think those front four will be able to get after it. And the corners that we have won't be left on an island so much like they were in Jim Schwartz's scheme. What I liked about Schwartz's scheme was it was simple. The front four attack, everyone else just cover your guy. Well, if everyone else can't just cover your guy, then it's not that simple. So
exactly.
If this zone scheme that Rich Gannon hopefully brings in that was able to make an older Xavier Rhodes look pretty good, a TJ Carey look pretty good, hopefully he can bring that sort of thing to the Eagles. And that's, again, what I want to bring in draft-wise a little bit, here in a couple of minutes. And then, like you said, on the offense, I think if nothing else, we can be similar to the Baltimore Ravens. I think we can run a read option with Hurts and Miles Sanders and have a good, effective intermediate game with Dallas Goedert. It's just like you said, getting our playmakers on the edge to make some plays. And, you mentioned J.J. Arcega-Whiteside hopefully being the replacement for Alshon Jeffrey. That's exactly what I thought. I thought, okay, they're identifying what they like in Alshon, and here's the replacement in J.J., and it hasn't worked out that way. They were identifying what they liked in Deshaun Jackson. They're trying to replace it with Jalen Reagor. Hasn't worked out that way. So, granted, I mean, I know Brandon Lee Gowton said if Devonta Smith is there at 12, please, for the love of God, take him because it'll be so similar to what we saw with Justin Jefferson. I mean, with Justin Jefferson, I feel like they overthought it. They thought this guy plays too much in the slot. I don't know if we can use him on the outside. But all he did was dominate SEC conference, and that's all Devonta Smith has been doing is dominate the SEC conference. So I swear if we pass on this guy, it will drive me nuts. But going in that direction, okay, let's bring it to that. Let's say this nightmare scenario happens where 4 quarterbacks could get taken. Right, let me put my drink down. Chase, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Pitts could all go. So that brings us to 8. And then the 2 offensive tackles makes 10. 2 corners and J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain. Let's say all those guys are unavailable. Who is your top pick at that point?
Micah Parsons.
Okay.
I'm the biggest Micah Parsons fan, to be honest. Like I probably would have took him at 6. I would still take him at 12 if he ends up being there. I think a lot of people are just sleeping on Micah Parsons. I think we had, I just made that whole speech about our linebacking core for the past like decade. I feel like so he's a generational talent at linebacker. I mean, there's really no way around it. People are saying, he can't. The knocks I've heard on him are like he can't cover, which I don't agree with at all. But and then another thing is like his personal, his character issues. I'm a full-time Penn State fan. I've heard some things. I'm not gonna sit here and say he has got a clean slate, but I've not heard half of these stuff that people make up, bro. Like it always happens with these high-profile players that once you get close to the NFL draft, if you don't have a good enough PR team, I guess you can call it, things are going to leak. People are going to say things you don't want to hear. You know what I'm saying? So none of that scares me with him. I think he's going to be the best player that can go as a linebacker. I think he's going to be the best defensive player that goes, to be honest, in the top 15. Like, I think he's better than both corners. I think he's better than any defensive lineman that's out there. I think he's the best linebacker. I think people are just are listening to the media a little bit too much when it comes to Micah Parsons, personally. That's just my personal opinion on it, because honestly, he went from like being a top 5 pick to being out of the top 15 because of character issues, which is just weird to me. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. But if that scenario happened, I would cry tears of joy and I would go buy a Micah Parsons jersey that day. I would be so happy.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I just can't help but feel like I won't even get into that. When it comes to like, obviously there was a thing lately about how the team wasn't ready to name Jalen Hurts the official starter yet, and all this. You mentioned earlier, right? We want to give the impression that there's competition in every position, which I totally agree with you. What you were saying. Don't make anyone feel safe. Don't make anyone feel content. You got to work every day to earn your position. Ultimately, I think we all understand Jalen Hurts is going to beat out Joe Flacco for this job. But it's something that is wise to do. If you make your intentions known before the NFL draft, you have no leverage when it comes to moving up or moving back. So I do think it's smart not to show your hand. Maybe Jalen Hurts is a guy. Maybe we'll take a quarterback. Who knows? I would love for the Eagles to trade with the Broncos to leapfrog right ahead of the Cowboys and Giants, because that would just be so sweet. God, that would be beautiful. But, I mean, you can't show your hand, and I feel like that's what the 49ers are doing right now. I think they're doing such a good job of just putting up a huge smokescreen of what they actually want to do. They went to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch went to Mac Jones's pro day. They're talking all about Jones and maybe it's Trey Lance, when really I think they just don't want to let the Jets know how much they're in love with Justin Fields. What's your thoughts on the whole 49ers situation right now with, Fields, Mac Jones, and all that sort of thing?
Well, we, on my channel, we're doing a mock draft series, so we've been able to have some 49ers content creators come on. I was talking to one guy named John Chapman. Definitely go check him out. He covers the 49ers. Very, very good. I was also talking to 49ers all day. They have me on their channel. So I've got a little bit of insight as to what they think, at least, But, look, I've heard a lot about Mac Jones. I've heard that Mac Jones is the guy that just fits their offense. And the words that I've heard were, he's a more athletic Jimmy Garoppolo, which it is not the greatest thing to hear, right? But that's what they've been saying. But Justin Fields, on the other hand, Justin Fields is one of those guys that you need to put him in an offense that he's going to be able to air it out. That he's going to be able to just, launch that ball and just have fun in the offense, to be honest. And realistically, I don't think that the 49ers offense is built like that. They're a run-first team. they're a short pass timing type team. So while I won't say that they're totally out on Justin Fields, I do feel because of that Mac Jones probably fits more of what they like to do. Do I think Mac Jones is a better player? Not at all. I think that Justin Fields is a way better quarterback. But if you look at, and we said this, right? It's all about scheme, right? So if you look at their scheme, I feel like what they want to do, Mac Jones is perfect for that. But I do think Justin Fields is the better prospect. If I had to choose who they would take, that would be tough. I think all three are in play, to be honest. I love Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is getting slept on just because of, his level of competition. And obviously only played 1 year, but he balled out. He definitely did. But if I had to pick one, I think they probably will go Mac Jones. I just really do feel like Mac Jones fits what they want to do. It just makes too much sense. And like I said, I don't even like Mac Jones personally. I don't think that Mac Jones is a top 15 quarterback. Like the closest that I got him in the first round was to the Patriots. Like that was legit the team that I kept on saying he makes a lot of sense to go there. If he went to the Patriots, I think he would really do well for them. But he might do really well in San Fran. And I mean, they took Jimmy Garoppolo thinking he was going to be that guy, and they haven't really hit on quarterbacks as of late. So maybe they just take another swing and miss, because I really don't think Mac Jones is going to be that guy, but he does fit what they do. So that might be that saving grace for him. But we'll see. We'll definitely see.
No, for sure. For sure. And, let's say the trade between Miami and San Fran never happened. The trade between Miami and Eagles never happened. Philly's still sitting at number 6. And somehow, some way, Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase are both on the board. Who is Mr. Joe Castro, a.k.a. Philly Fresco, taking there?
If it's between those two, it's going to be Jamar Chase for me. And this is going to be an unpopular opinion, so everybody get your tomatoes ready. But I'm not a big fan of Kyle Pitts in the top 10. I personally don't think he's going to go in the top 10. I've said this before. That's my hot take. I think he's going to slip out of the top 10. I think he might go to the Cowboys or the Giants. But if he doesn't, he might see him slip pretty low. I mean, I don't think people are as in love with him as people think. There's just no record. There's no history. Like, I did a video, I've done a lot of videos of the scouting and trying to like really go deep in on these guys' history and stuff like that. And Kyle Pitts, man, I mean, something for me is when you see a great player, usually they're at least very, very good at all levels. Like, you have that, look at Trevor Lawrence, unless I know it's kind of a difficult kind of comparison, but you look at Trevor Lawrence, he was a god in middle school. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was always that great player. So, it's like Kyle Pitts had 300 yards of receiving yards his senior season in high school. That doesn't really say much to me. I mean, like, and then you look at his college career. Freshman year was he was just getting his feet wet. It was kind of mediocre. His sophomore year was very good, at least volume wise. He got a lot of targets, but his quarterback sucked that year. Kyle Trask did not do well when targeting him a lot. And then you go to his junior year, balled the hell out. So it's like, but also he was targeted way less and his quarterback did way better. So, there's so many things that go with him that it's like, if you take him in the top 10, you're legitimately just picking him because of his athleticism and his ceiling. And you're saying what he could be. Like, I don't feel like Kyle Pitts is a I love what he is right now type pick. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that he's a great player. He has a great ceiling. He has great attributes, fast, strong, big. He can catch the ball. I don't think he had a drop all of his last year, which is incredible. I just don't really believe in him. I think he can be a good player. I just don't know. Do you take can or do you take could or might be in the top 10? That's really my thing. And it's like, if you look at a lot of these teams, if they're looking for a wide receiver, there's better options. I feel like Jamar Chase is an actual wide receiver. Kyle Pitts, you might be able to move him to wide receiver, but again, we're saying might, right? You know, and it's like if he becomes a great tight end, I've asked this to a lot of people. I probably wouldn't take Gronkowski in the top 10, even if I knew what he was. Like realistically, like I don't think that the tight end position makes that big of a difference that it's going to propel us to some type of greatness. You know, I think tight end is a good position to have. You know, when you have a good team, it's awesome to have that tight end as well. But I already think we kind of have that. You know, we have Dallas Goedert. Obviously, Zach Ertz is still on the team right now. We'll see what happens. But even if Zach Ertz isn't on this team, I just don't see the fit for Kyle Pitts. Like, at that point, especially if it's between him and Jamar Chase, go get Jamar Chase. Now, if Kyle Pitts is there at 12, talk to me. We can pick him up. I'm not mad because once you get to 12, you're kind of getting in that you're either going to take Christian Barrymore, you know, and hope that he's a good defensive lineman, or you're going to take the best offensive prospect on the board. So, you know, if we're at 12, I'm not mad at that. But at 6, that's way too high for me. You know, if we were to move back up, I've even made like a video talking about I would not be mad if the Eagles moved back up to number 4 and got a Jamar Chase. Look, if that's the guy that you really thought was that dude and you moved out of 6 because you thought that the Bengals were going to get him, go ahead. Go give up what we just got and go back into the – I would have no problem with that at all. So, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is. It's just I feel like you have to take a solid thing, and I really don't feel like Kyle Pitts is that yet because you can't – outside of his junior year, you can't tell me that kid really, like, dominated ever. You know, he really just never – for me at least. You know, I could be clouded vision, whatever you want to call it, but, like, I just haven't seen it. And you're going to pay this guy out the wazoo, right? And, like, what's the biggest difference between him and a Pat Fryermuth? A Pat Fryermuth who balled the hell out for the Penn State Nittany Lions for, like, the past 3 years. Yeah. He's on many boards. He's the number 2 tight end. Not as fast, not as big, but balled the hell out and just as good, in my opinion. So, I mean, it is what it is. We'll see. I just don't think Kyle Pitts is a top 10 player right now. He might prove me wrong. Like, a lot of these people might prove me wrong. So I'm excited to see, but I would definitely go Jamar Chase.
No, I think it's there's so many things I want to say off of that. I mean, there's something to be said for positional value. When you look at the league right now, Kelsey, Kittle, Darren Waller, I think a lot of people would view them as the top tight ends in the league, none of which were first-round picks. I mean, you think of first-round picks, you're thinking of Eric Ebron, multiple teams, you know, before he finally found success. TJ Hawkinson, maybe starting to find some footing in Detroit. Noah Fant, I mean, we're still waiting on him in Denver. So there's definitely something to be said for first-round tight ends, that there's an adjustment to the game and all those sorts of things that go into it. You know, it's not that easy to just plug and play when it comes to tight ends, apparently. So there's definitely something to that. And then as well, I mean, just looking at the Eagles, I'm super curious to see Akeem Butler, if he can make the transition to tight end. The quarterback, Tyree Jackson from Buffalo, see if he makes the transition. So, you know, maybe we get a Logan Thomas type of player in one of those two. Former quarterback, athletic tight end, number 2. We'll see there. But, yeah, I couldn't agree more with, you know, might be overhyped a little bit, Kyle Pitts in the top 10 for sure. And then you just think about the Jamar Chase conversation is so interesting to me because it seems like a lot of the people who say that the Eagles are rebuilding and they're going to suck this year also want Jamar Chase. So they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. Like, they want the Eagles to suck, but they want to watch this connection between Hurts and Chase. You know, I mean, for God's sakes, we gained an extra first-round pick by trading back 6 spots. I mean,
I will say this. I understand, and I said it this whole show that I think that, you know, the defense is the main spot of concern. But when you're in the top 15, you have to get a game changer, and especially if you do move back up. Like I said, I mean, it is what it is, kind of dumb. You know, like I think that moving back in the first place was dumb. But if it's to recoup, because my thinking with that is if, all right, you moved back, you got the Miami's extra first. Maybe now you can say, all right, I'll give you my 12, I'll give you Miami's first, and I'll give you some late round pick this year, or maybe a Zach Ertz or something like that, and it changes it a little bit. But I'm thinking there's ways that you can package it so now you still are sitting with either 2 firsts next year and 1 second, or 1 first next year and possibly 2 seconds, or possibly 2 firsts, depending on what pick you trade. Because realistically, if you look at these picks outside of our pick, none of these picks are going to be top 20 picks realistically. I mean, and our pick might not even be a top 20. Who knows how good we're going to be? So, the Miami Dolphins aren't going to be absolute garbage this year. Like, that's just not going to happen. They're probably going to be pretty decent, if not make the playoffs. So, I mean, if we trade that pick, you got Jamar Chase for a 25th pick, a 22nd pick. So I'm not too mad about losing that pick. Same thing with Colts. If it's a first-round pick, it's because they were good. So it's not going to be a great pick. So, like, if you can go get somebody like a Jamar Chase and it's going to cost you one of those, not a bunch of those, but, one of those, I can live with that. If it's somebody that you're sitting here saying, listen, he's going to be a game changer. And I understand we have a lot of wide receivers, but at the end of the day, we don't have one Jamar Chase. Like, if Jamar Chase would come in and be our best wide receiver, and Devontae Smith probably would come in and be our best wide receiver. So I'm open to the idea of going offense in general in the first round. I do, like I said, I'm a huge fan of Micah Parsons. I really want him on the team. After him, it's probably like either J.C. Horner or Patrick Surtain. But if Devontae Smith is there, if Kyle Pitts is there, if Jamar Chase is somebody that you're willing to go move up for, I say pull the trigger, man. Like, YOLO, right? That's what they say, YOLO. You only live once. You got to go out there and make the best decision. So I'm open to it because we have 11 picks too, and there's a lot of good defensive players in this draft. So, look, I'm open to anything as long as it makes sense. Just don't get me a quarterback. No, just don't get me a quarterback. That's all I'm asking. Or a running back. I don't want a running back. I don't want a quarterback. I don't really want Christian Barrymore or Kwity Paye or any of these D linemen. Not at 12. If you're going to move back, then okay. But at 12, you have to get a marquee player. Like, Christian Barrymore is not Fletcher Cox. And he never – I don't want to say he never will be, but Christian Barrymore he's not even the best D lineman in my opinion. I know I'm not no scout or anything, but it just wouldn't make sense to me at 12 because there's nobody that's fighting for him right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's not one of those names that's like, oh, he might go as high as – like, we're the only team that really brought him up. So it's like I'm good, bro. I'm good on that. So just stick to what we need, but get the best player at that position. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the way the board is going to work out, an offensive player will be the highest rated at the time. Again, I would love for the Eagles. If the Eagles haven't been in contact with teams that pick 4 through 9, then we're just not doing it right. I mean, we should be in touch with the Falcons all the way down to the Broncos at 9 to make sure we can leapfrog our division rivals, if nothing else, and grab someone very talented. I know you talked to BLG. He mentioned what some other people have echoed, and that Travis Fulgham, as well as he did, may have had some concerns with like work ethic and whatnot. So I'm hoping that's not the case because I would love for, a trio of wide receivers to involve Rager, Fulgham, and Ward, and then work in the rookie as he gets going, whether that's Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle. Ideally, that's what I would like to see. But I do agree when the Eagles pick an offensive player should be the highest rated on the board. From what everyone's been saying, the defensive line talent can be had later in the draft. I agree with a lot of people who say Rich Gannon's scheme. If you want a D-back, you can get someone like an Efeite Melifanu out of Syracuse later, or, someone like that later. So, yeah, I totally agree. Offense, probably wide receiver needs to be the way to go early on. I definitely think that's the way to go. And I'm going to try to wind it down here because you've been super generous with your time. I truly appreciate it. Man.
Of course. It was my pleasure.
When it comes to the division outlook as a whole, how do you think by the end of the year? I mean, you've got the Washington football team with Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Giants still trying to work it out with Daniel Jones. They've added Kenny Galladay. Cowboys are about to get Dak Prescott back. How would you project this division by the end of the 2021 season?
Everybody's going to suck but the Eagles, basically. Realistically, the only team that really kind of scares me this year is the Giants, to be honest. Like, I think if Washington can draft a really good quarterback, then, hey, more power to them. I love Ron Rivera, like a weird bond with him. I'm Puerto Rican, So like he's a Puerto Rican coach, and it's just like he's the first Puerto Rican to ever be in the Super Bowl. So it's just I've always had a lot of respect for him. It sucks that he's a Washington football team coach, but I think that what he's done with that team is incredible. To be honest, getting the most out of Alex Smith, moving on from Dwayne Haskins, I think is a move that doesn't get enough credit. To be honest, I think to have the cojones to do something like that says a lot about you as a person and a coach. Obviously, him coming back from cancer. I mean, I could sit here and spew a bunch of things about Ron Rivera. I truly do respect that man. But I don't think that team's that good. But I like him. But outside of that D line and that defense in general, they got some work to do. So we'll see what they do. Like I said, if they can get a good quarterback, they are definitely somebody I would be afraid of. They're going to be probably around a 500 team just because that's who Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Like, he's literally a 500 quarterback. That's just who he is. So it'll be interesting to watch them and see what happens. Dallas doesn't really scare me because Dallas doesn't really know what the heck they are yet. If Dallas went and got a linebacker, like if Dallas went and drafted Micah Parsons, or if they drafted Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn, I would be nervous. I would definitely sit here and be like, listen, that defense is going to get better, and that's scary. That's the only thing that Dallas can do to really make me nervous is get their defense right, because that all they do is worry about their offense, and you can score 1,000,000 points. If your defense giving up 1,000,001, you're going to lose every game, right? So I'm not too worried about them unless they make the right decision in the draft. I think that kind of goes the same to say with us, to be honest. Like, I think, we could be good. We could be good, but we have to make the right decisions. The Giants have been making some good decisions, and look, they made a decent, push last year without Saquon Barkley, with a very bad offensive line, a very inconsistent Daniel Jones, without a Kenny Golladay. Their defense, I feel like, got better every week. So they're a scary team, and I hate to say that. I hate the Giants, but they have a good team. They have a good defense. They have all the pieces. This draft could really put them over the top. So I really think if I had to pick a winner of the division that isn't the Eagles, because, I would always say that the Eagles is going to win, I would say that the Giants are probably my biggest fear in the division right now.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, that from what I've heard, the Giants seem to be in third place, behind the football team and the Cowboys. So for you to say that, I mean, that's interesting. I like that you threw a wrench in there. That's a good point about Fitzpatrick. I mean, he certainly starts off the year hot and cools down pretty quickly eventually. From what people, a lot of people talk about Dak Prescott and how well he started off last season, but then apparently if you look deeper, it was more like when they were already trailing and the teams were in more of a prevent defense, and that's when he got his numbers. I don't think he's a great clutch quarterback. I do think he's Matt Stafford-ish, and that he can put up numbers, but when the time really is calling for him, he tends to make a mistake here and there. So there's something to be said for that for sure. If the Cowboys somehow end up with Kyle Pitts, I know that's going to be every Eagles fan's worst nightmare. But like you said,
I wouldn't be afraid of that. I would not be afraid. I was talking with this about this to somebody else, and I was actually on my live this morning talking about this. I'm not afraid of that at all. Actually, I would love for that to happen. I would love for the Cowboys to go get another offensive weapon. It would make zero sense. It would make zero sense for them. Like, realistically, like, if you didn't have the worst defense in history last year, you might have actually made the playoffs. Like, our division was that bad. You just could not hold anybody. You know what I'm saying? And to Dak Prescott's defense, the defense gave up like 30 points to the Jets before he even got on the field, it felt like. So, even stuff like that, I do agree that Dak Prescott is he's a garbage time quarterback in a sense of the word. Like, he is a good player. He is a great athlete, but he does have to come back a lot. And that's not all his fault. You know what I'm saying? That obviously has a lot to do with that defense. So if you want to go get Kyle Pitts, cool with me. I talk to a lot of Cowboy fans as well. We have a lot of Cowboy fans on the channel and stuff. And I poke fun at one in particular, my guy Jay Tuck, all the time. And he was talking about Kyle Pitts. And I was like, I know he was like, if Kyle Pitts gets drafted by somebody else, you're going to see, Kyle Pitts one-handed catch over the Dallas secondary. And I'm like, bro, that could be anybody. Your secondary is garbage. So he puts up a picture of Amari Cooper. And I'm like, did Amari Cooper switch to cornerback? Like, that's why I'm not too worried about them getting another wide receiver. They're doing it with the sense that Michael Gallup is going to leave. Gallup is going to leave because he's the fourth option. So you want another fourth option? Or
Right.
you want to push Amari Cooper down that you're paying $1 billion to, or you want to push, CeeDee Lamb, who you're pretty soon going to have to be paying pretty good money to. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. You're putting too many, we said it with the coaching staff, too many cooks in the kitchen, too many chefs in the kitchen. Everybody wants to stir the pot, but nobody wants to read the recipe, right? So you have to get things that make sense. And if the Cowboys go offense, other than offensive line, if they go offensive line, I can get that. But you don't need a wide receiver. You don't need a tight end. You don't need another offensive weapon. You need to stop other teams from scoring on you. So, look, if they get Kyle Pitts, I would not be worried at all. I would love it. I would think it would be hilarious, to be honest. And I know I'm the only one. So, trust me, I know you're probably thinking in your head, like, this dude's crazy. I know I'm the only one. But, hey, I would not be mad at all. I think that would be the dumbest pick, to be honest. But that's just me. That's just me.
I'm actually glad you brought that up again. You being a chef, I was going to ask originally, what's your favorite dish to prepare?
That's a tough one. I always get asked this. I'm a chef, but I'm also fat, so I like to eat. So anything I can eat. But now being Spanish, I like to make a lot of Spanish dishes. So penne, rice and beans, simple stuff. I like to make what my moms and what my sister make for me. So a lot of easy stuff. But I've cooked everything, you know what I'm saying? I've cooked everything. And living in Florida now, I basically used to live in a deep fryer because everybody out here, they deep fry literally everything. So, I've tasted a lot of different things. So, but definitely just my Spanish food, just, that home style cooking,
No, I hear you. Because when I go to a restaurant, it may be just me, but you have the whole menu. And then you have this little corner section that's like the original combinations. And there's something about just ordering a chile relleno and some flautas. Puts a gleam in their eye. Like, oh, yeah. Not getting like a chicken with some pineapple and a cherry on top. Like,
exactly.
Just the basics, rice and beans and a little bit of pollo. Yeah, I do appreciate that for sure.
I used to work in a country club called Glen Kernan. And we used to cook for football players. A lot of the Jaguars used to live there. But Tim Tebow lived there as well. And I say that to say this: what he eats, I can't get in trouble for this because I don't work there no more. But he eats literally the weirdest things in the world. Like he used to eat it was just like spinach with eggs and sausage and chicken and fish and anything you can think of that just doesn't belong together. He put it in one big salad and loved the heck out of it. So, hey, different strokes for different folks, right?
For sure. It definitely wasn't into that TB12. They weren't eating the same thing, that's for sure. Oh, that's awesome. Just a few more for you. When it comes to the draft on Thursday night, do you have any wild predictions? Like one of mine is, I think a team is going to either select Kyle Trask and there's going to be 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round, or a team is going to trade back up, maybe like the New England Patriots, maybe like the Vikings, and take Kyle Trask. So my wild prediction is 6 quarterbacks in the first round. Do you have any weird predictions for the first round?
That could definitely happen. I think outside of my Kyle Pitts dropping out of the top 10, I'm gonna stick to my Eagles, and I'm gonna say that I think we'll be to kind of piggyback off what you're saying. I think we might be the team that the Patriots call. Okay. I think if maybe it is Kyle Trask, maybe it's a Mac Jones. I'm leaning more towards a Mac Jones falls out of the top 10, and they see that he's at 12 and they jump up for him. But either way, whoever the quarterback is, I think that we're in a prime position right now for somebody like the Patriots to say, hey, we'll give you our second round pick and let us move us up 3 spots. And at that point, depending on who's on the board, I should say, the Eagles would be dumb to not take that, because realistically, you're already at 15, in my opinion. You're already there. So go back the extra 3 spots and take that. So I think that, we're going to trade again. I think that the Eagles might be trading back again. And I know a lot of people probably won't like it, but I definitely think that might be happening.
Well, there you go, Philadelphia. You're here to hear Mr. Joe Castro. You think it's going to happen? Listen, you've been awesome with your time. I can't appreciate you enough for just, getting a hold of me, coming back to me, being very flexible with the time. We're an hour plus in right now, so you're awesome. Joe Castro, a.k.a. Philly Fresco. Do you got anything for us? I know you want to plug Philly the podcast for sure, so please go ahead and do that. Do you have any special plans for the draft or anything like that? Maybe some guests coming up that you want to shout out?
So we are doing a live call-in for the first night of the draft. So Thursday, we're going to do live call-in. So if you guys have any type of, emotions or you want to just get something off your chest during the draft, we're here for you. We will be drafting. We will be streaming the whole 3 days of the draft. We are going to be sprinkling a couple of special guests in there. Don't want to say just yet. They're going to be kind of some surprises. But tomorrow, I can't say this. You will be the first to know. Tomorrow, we're having a big show with Connor Miles from Sports Illustrated, Philly Mike from Philly Talk Podcast, Philly Take with RB, Thomas Arnone from A2D Radio, and I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. I think that is it. But we're all getting together. That is it. All right. So we're all getting together tomorrow at 9 p.m. and we're just going to talk some football. We're just going to talk some draft and just trying to figure out what we're going to do. So like I said, that's going to be Connor Miles from Sports Illustrated, Thomas Arnone, A2D Radio, RB from Philly Take with RB, Philly Mike from the Philly Talk Podcast. So definitely come on over tomorrow and check that out. And like you said, we will be streaming the whole draft. So very, very excited, man. I'm very excited.
I'm so happy for you, man. To see people succeeding in their craft, you guys really work hard on your podcast. I will say that. I throw up a live here and there, but you guys really take time to do graphics for a YouTube channel. You have an intro. You monetize it all that sort of thing that I'm so happy for you guys for. So please, football fans, especially Eagles fans, check out Mr. Joe Castro and his buddy Brandon. They do an awesome job with Philly the podcast. Thank you, sir, for joining me tonight, and you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much for having me, man, and God bless with everything, man.
Thank you so much, man. I'll see you.
Yes, sir. Take it easy, bro.
Later.